Welcome to our Church Resources event, our Aged Care Food Services Standard and Royal Commission presentation. So for those who don't know me, I am Dr. Karen Abbey and I am Church Resources' Food Service Ambassador. I'm also a food service dietitian. I have a PhD in food services, special dietary chef, and also I work for University of Queensland in the as a food service lecturer as well. So we've got lots of things to talk about this afternoon. So it's very exciting to see the numbers are still growing. This is being recorded just in case you actually feel like you've missed anything. If you do come a little bit late, there will be a recording and it will be on our website for you to actually have a look. But we do have to get started because very exciting. Okay, so next slide. So just some housekeeping for everybody. Basically, if everyone would mind keeping their cameras off and also their mute functions, so we don't hear anybody. That just helps, obviously, with the strain on the actual system. We do have a lot of people trying to get in still, and we have over 100 registrants, so hopefully everyone will be able to get on board really soon. There will be time at the end of this presentation for questions. So it's really important that if you want to actually have any questions, please throw those into the chat box function, and we'll be obviously looking at those questions towards the end of the presentation, which is fine. As I said, we are recording this, so you know this can be replayed and recorded for any time you need it, and that will be on our website. The presentation, so at the end of this there will be a wonderful survey which we'll hope you all will fill in, and we are going to be doing some polls during this presentation, so hopefully everybody has their phones ready to actually be able to partake as part of that poll. Okay, so let's get started with today's presentation. So next slide, please. So as I said, welcome to the Church Resources' Food Service event. I'm your host. We also have joined with us today, we have Ian Birrell, who is the Category Manager for Food Service Solutions. We have some guest speakers. We have Paula Thornton from Harvey Norman Commercial, and we have Lindy Twyford from Royal Freemasons Benevolent Institution. Now, Church Resources is very committed to support organisational procurement. This event is the first in a series designed to support members of Church Resources, that's all you people out there. And really what we're really trying to do is have very high quality level events that basically can help upskill staff, increase your knowledge to support your role and work, and to support those in care, which is obviously what we all really want to do. We need to have lots of practical solutions and resources, and anyone who's ever met me would know that I'm very, very practical, very, very able to, you know, translate information and get things down and come up with really good solutions. So that's what we're going to be doing today in terms of our event, and we are, as I said, going to be focusing on some of the standards and also looking at some of the feedback from the Royal Commission. So we'll take the next slide, please. So as I said, today we're going to be looking at standard, but we're going to really be honing in on standard 4.3F. Okay, and in that area we've actually got things like nutrition, hydration and malnutrition we're going to cover. We're also going to explore some of the food service issues from the Royal Commission. So I've actually picked out some of the comments that have been presented from the interim report, and that we're going to use some of those examples and look at how the standards can interface, and also just, I suppose, lots of practicality around that. We're going to be doing a lot of exploring around food services, which I think is very, very excited. And we're going to discuss making the most of your food services as well. We're also going to have our guest speakers, both Lindy and Paula, talk about, Lindy's firstly going to talk about the Royal Commission, and Paula's we're going to have a bit of a chat about equipment and things like that. We're also going to spend a little bit of time looking at procurement solutions as well. And we're going to look at the things that Church Resources has actually been doing in terms of value adding to your organisation through our free resources and things that we've got available, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's really get into the body of this presentation, and I'll have the next slide. Now, everybody knows about the 8 standards. Okay, so we're not focusing really on the 8 standards at all, but everyone knows about them and what they all do. We're going to focus, as I said, on standard 4.3F, and that is the standard that where meals are provided, they are varied and of suitable quality and quantity, which is really important. Now, I actually looked at this standard when it changed over last year, and I was looking at it and looking at the materials around, you know, 3.4F, and I just went, wow, you know, there's a lot of information in this, and I wonder how aged care homes are actually going in this space. So then I went digging through the internet and Googled a few things and went to the self-assessment tools on the aged care quality website standards and did all that sort of stuff. And I didn't really find a lot of stuff. There's some bits and pieces there, but I didn't really find a lot of things. So basically what I did was I thought, well, maybe I should make up something. Maybe I should look through that particular stand and say, okay, what can I do in this space that actually maybe be able to help lots of people? So I'll just have the next slide. Thanks, Esther. So what I did was I found this. So this was found on the Quality Standards website, and it was this kind of Excel spreadsheet thingy. And I was looking through it, and I was just amazed that I thought, okay, this is all standard 4, and standard 4 is quite big. And the one part that I'm doing is obviously the part that's down here. And I just thought to myself, wow, that really provides a huge amount of information. So I thought, right, what can I do in this space to actually make this a little bit better? So can I just have the next slide? Okay, so what I've done was I came up with a checklist. So I went through 3, 4F, and I have absolutely pulled that standard apart and taken every single solitary sentence and actually came up with a bit of a checklist. And I'll talk a little bit more about this checklist as we get towards the end of the presentation as to what I did and how it actually can be used to support those working in food services. Because don't forget, standard 4, 3F really is about what actually is happening in that food service space. And it's really important, obviously, because food is one of the predominantly most important things we actually have in food services. So I'll just have the next slide. So now, here we go. So we're going to actually talk about, what we're going to do is going to run some polls. And what I want to do is, what you all have to do is get your mobile phones. When you get your mobile phone, you need to get you onto a Google server or whatever engine you want to use, and you have to type in www.mentimeter.com.au. And so what that does is we'll get a code. And so if you can all do that, that'll be fantastic. And then if you've done that right now, so I'll let you give you a little bit of time just to find that website. Okay, so on the screen, you should see a place where you can type a code. Now you only have to type this code once, and that, well, there you go. So 582115 is the code. And as you can see, we'll just wait for everybody to have a bit of a go at this. And I know it's a little bit, we'll be a bit slow for the first one, but what we'll do is, okay, so here we go. All right. So people are now doing that. I can see how many people are actually logged on. So I'll just give it a little while everybody has a bit of go at getting this organised. Because the screen actually tells me how many people have actually done the survey. This is amazing, isn't it? We'll just talk about technology for 5 seconds. This is amazing how we could all stand here all across the nation and actually start to see the results come in as they change, as more and more people start to put their answers in. I'm just watching the numbers go up and as the figures start to say. So I want to give people a bit of a chance because I realise this is the first one. So I just give everyone a bit of a chance to have a go. So we'll just spend probably another half a minute here, just giving everyone an opportunity. Wow, look at that. Now, I would really say, I think, having read the standard, I don't know how many times, lost count, there is a lot of information in this standard. And I think the opportunity to really sit down and have a bit of a chat about that today is going to be really excellent. And as we can see, there are a few that actually are not sure. There's certainly the majority of people need more information, which is fantastic. Great. Okay. So that seems to be a bit static. I know, still people coming in. Okay, all right. So that's very interesting, isn't it? So we've got a lot of people, some people know it well, it's like 18% know it well, 23% no idea, 38% need more information, which is we will work on today as well. Difficult to translate, I would actually understand that. I think, that's true. And not sure and need more help, which is fantastic. Okay, well, thank you everyone for partaking in that poll. That was really Interesting. This is the first time we've actually really done this in one of our events, so excellent. So we'll go to the next slide. All right. So let's just talk about this standard to see basically how this works, and we'll talk about the intention of this requirement for 4.3F. Okay, so it is to make sure that consumers have enough nutrition and hydration to maintain life and good health and reduce the risk of malnutrition and dehydration. Meals and the dining experience are a very significant part of day-to-day life, and parts of the organisation are expected to make sure that consumers have enough to eat and drink to meet their nutrition and hydration needs and provide consumers with the support they need to eat and drink. So, really in a nutshell, 4.3F is all about nutrition, hydration, some choice, making sure residents have a really nice dining experience, and it's all consumer. And because we all know the whole 8 standards are about, obviously, the consumers' expectations, and all those sorts of things as well, which is actually really important. So again, this is what the intention of this requirement is. So can we go to the next slide? Okay. Now, this is expected to be based on and assessed needs, and obviously addresses the following things. So what is the need to sustain life and support ongoing good health? So 4.3F actually has all these things written there. You can read this if you go and grab the standard. Any dietary intolerances, allergens or medication contradictions, the level of support or help the consumer needs, consumer preferences and religious and cultural considerations, timing of the meals. Okay, so they're what's actually expected on the assessed needs, and obviously things that need to be actually addressed. The other things in this expected area is that organisations monitor nutritional and hydration intake to prevent dehydration, weight loss and weight gain. Foods can be powerful social symbol, connecting consumers with moods, emotions, rituals related to their identity. Mealtime habits built over time can inspire a feeling of comfort and familiarity for consumers, and organisations to take into account a consumer's preferences, religious and cultural background when providing food and drinks or hosting meals. Now, that's a lot of stuff. And as you can see, even standard 4.3F is huge. It is massive in terms of what's expected to deliver food services and meet all the expectations of residents and all the other bits and pieces. So you might notice on this slide that there's some words in bold. Originally, this presentation was actually going to be done online, face-to-face, but of course, things happen, and, COVID-19 came along. So what we did is we actually chopped this presentation in half, and I'll talk about that when I get to the end of this presentation. But those words in bold are really important. So today we're going to be probably focusing a little bit on nutritional and hydration and the weight loss. We're not going to really talk a lot about the powerful social symbols, the mealtime habits or consumer preferences. We're actually going to move that to another event so that we actually can spend a bit more time looking at things like nutrition, hydration, and also get to the Royal Commission and talk about some of those examples from the Royal Commission. So let's just take the next slide. Okay, so nutrition, for example. So I'm only going to spend a little bit of time here at each of these slides, because basically we want to spend a lot more time obviously talking about things like the Royal Commission. But nutrition obviously is very important, and I would have to say nutrition is the most important thing that you have in an aged care home. And actually it's the most important thing everybody on this presentation needs as well, because without good nutrition and all hydration, you actually don't have a really good quality of life. So basically nutrition is divided into roughly 2 categories. We've got the macronutrients and we've got the micronutrients. All those things come together so that we can actually get nutrients, we can get energy, and we can do all the bits and pieces we need to do in our life, which is actually important. And so to have the energy to get up and go and, in an aged care home, play bingo or do arts or craft or go on outings, or even move yourself around in an aged care home is actually essential. And of course, we want to have good nutrition so that we can maintain good health and our independence, which is actually what we need to do. So again, so that's nutrition. And of course, if we don't get a good enough or a reasonable amount of nutrition, we won't be able to maintain a healthy body weight. And I'll talk about that in a couple of slides along. But generally speaking, nutrition is fundamental to every single human being, and it is fundamental for everyone to be able to do what they want to do. And really, it should be one of the highest priorities within an aged care home. and hence the reason why there's a part of a standard 4.3F, which basically I think is designated to actually making sure that residents are getting all the nutrition that they need. Can we just go to the next slide? So hydration is equally as important. Each resident needs to have access to enough fluids. The variety of fluids throughout the day is actually really important. Everyone needs a certain amount of fluids per day. And of course, people who are on thickened fluids really need to be watched in terms of how much they're actually getting. And of course, fluid can come from quite a few places. You can have different types of fluids on the menu. You can get lots of fluids from high water content fruits and vegetables, or you can also get fluid from high water content meals, such as things like soups and stews and casseroles and things like that. One of the things I really like to see when I review menus for aged care homes is the fact that they do things like put like a fluid like milk, for example, on the morning and afternoon tea. And I like that because that shows me that they're getting extra protein and extra calcium on the menu, which is actually really important. So again, hydration is an important thing that we need to consider. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so we're going to do another poll. So by now you should actually have the code in and you should have the question sitting there ready for you to actually activate. So we'll go to the question, thanks. Okay, so which one of these foods contains the most kilojoules per 100 grams? Is it French fries, yogurt, chocolate, or pizza? So here's a nutrition question for you this afternoon. Which one has the most kilojoules per 100 grams? And there will be an answer. So let's see what everyone has to say in terms of what they think. So again, we'll just have a little bit of time here, just waiting for people to activate that question. For those who might have been a bit late, you can go to www.menti.com.au and plug in the code 582115 if you'd like to partake in this presentation this afternoon, or of this poll this afternoon, I should say. Still people deciding. Look at that. Chocolate seems to be the winner. French fries. Yogurt, pizzas. Oh, still got a few more people coming in. How interesting. I always think asking food questions to be really, really cool, because at the end of the day, it's really funny, really interesting what people think about food and how food is. Okay, still got a couple more people coming in. Okay, we might actually go to the next slide and we might actually see what the answer is. So 48% people thought chocolate was, 20% pizza, 11% for yogurt, and 20% for French fries. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the winner is chocolate. So for those who put chocolate down, that is actually the food that has the most kilojoules per 100 grams. So weight loss and malnutrition. Now this could be a whole event all by itself, to be honest, because it really is quite a complex. But just we're going to talk about a little bit malnutrition for one of our examples. So I just thought I'd pop this in. But basically, people lose weight when they're not eating enough to prevent weight loss. So again, you've got to make sure, obviously, residents are actually eating enough at every meal. And we often say, we have a saying that if a resident doesn't eat a meal, it's because, or if they don't get the chance to eat a meal, they don't like the meal, that's actually a real lost opportunity for nutrition. And the thing about our aged care residents is the fact that they're usually sparrow eaters, which means they're small eaters. That's what I call little sparrow eaters. It's also that our aged care residents don't really like small meals, and things like they lose taste, they lose dexterity, maybe find it difficult, go into a texture modified, all those sorts of things I think impact upon the types of intake that people can have. Also, we all know about what happens when residents go to hospital, that they actually, tend to come back with a little bit of weight loss, which is not good. So it's really important to understand this concept about weight loss. They do in the standard talk about weight gain, and basically, just hang on a sec. Can I just ask, because Eva's just joined us, to put your mic on mute, please? Thank you. So basically you've got people can be a little bit obese in aged care facilities, and again, that's another whole story. But generally speaking, we don't really like to look a lot about obesity in aged care. It's more about trying to, maintain it, like obviously healthy intakes, probably not put too much weight on, but generally speaking, it's something we don't really want to spend a lot of time there. Weight loss is the other spectrum, where basically people tend to lose weight really quickly in aged care homes. So it's really important to get fixed, make sure you got high nutrient density foods, and that's why we ran that poll, because chocolate happens to be a high density food. And as you look at that little photo, you can clearly see basically what is very low density up to very high density. And I would actually say providing residents things like chocolate and Kit Kat bars and all sorts of things would actually be a very effective way for people who are looking a little bit thin to actually get some extra energy and nutrients. Another key strategy, obviously, when we're talking about weight loss is food fortification and key nutrients. And we will be running some events in the area of nutrition coming up. So basically, we'll probably go over some of this information again. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's get down into the Royal Commission, and let's talk about some of the things that are actually going on. So for those who have gone to the Royal Commission website, you would see this is the terms of reference that is used for the Royal Commission. I just read that, and then in the bold words underneath the Royal Commission logo, I put out some common themes. Like, for example, it's about customers, it's about choice, person-centered care, the delivery of services, looking at how those things are actually occurring, the technology around those sorts of things, and does it meet the needs of the resident? And I think that's actually really one of the real take-homes is, does it meet the needs? So I think it's important when we talk about the Royal Commission that we just understand that it was a governing body brought down, obviously because there were great concerns within the community about how our aged care homes were running and all the sorts of things that go around that space. Now, there have been a number of revisions, there have been other investigations about what's happening in the aged care sector, and this is again another attempt, I think, to actually see if they can make heads and tails of what's actually going on. But don't forget, aged care has changed a lot over the last 5 years, and the community expectations in terms of what aged care is currently doing in this space and how it's supposed to be operating has really, really changed. And there is so much more emphasis now. There is a lot more expectations from the community as to how loved ones are to be looked after. So I think there's a lot of pressure on this industry. Can we go to the next slide, please? So before we dive in, and before we ask Lindy to join us, I just wanted to really just talk about positive and negative comments. And I really wanted to, I think you could honestly say that the aged care industry gets bashed around quite a bit. I'm not saying that there isn't things that we need to fix, and sometimes there's some images that come out that aren't, great to look at. However, sometimes it gets a bit negative bashing. And I think, in the aged care sector, I think everyone tries to do the very best they can with the resources they've got, and they certainly, I think, are doing it tough, especially right now with a bit of coronavirus chucked in on the mix. But generally, I think there's a lot of hard-working people, and there's a lot of hard people in all facilities, and there's a lot of hard-working food service people as well. And I think doing food services in aged care is quite tricky. It is something that actually takes a lot of skill sometimes. It has to meet an incredible amount of residents' needs. If you think about it, if you had 100 residents, every single one of those residents has a like, a dislike, a food preference, and you've actually got to, every day, every meal, make that absolutely perfect for that person. So again, it's really important to understand that we've got, a lot of things happening in that space. So I think food services does a really, really good job. And I would have to say, from everything that I've seen, and I've been into hundreds of aged care homes and done thousands of hours on the floor, I think people try to do the very best they can. I'm not saying it doesn't always work, but we all make mistakes, and sometimes we all could do a little bit better. So what I'm really saying about the negative comments is the fact that sometimes I think they're a learning. We should actually flip them and say, okay, they might have been a bit negative, but what can we all take from that? So I've put down a couple of things that we can all really think about. Is like, what are the learnings? What can we learn from that comment? You look at your own food services, how's it working? What are the issues around that? Can it be prevented? Can they be prevented? And what does that mean in terms of your system? What do you have to do to make sure that that kind of thing is not repeated? what parts or part of the system or the food service system is actually involved, and what type of resources or investments, training or system changes are actually needed. So I think it's really important that, I don't actually have a problem with negative comments. I think sometimes we all make mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with actually trying to learn from something that doesn't work. I think we're living in a big society right now where, people don't like being wrong, and yet sometimes wrong is where you get the best learnings. It's like doing research. Sometimes we don't get very good results when we do research, but hang on a tick. You just got to twist it around and say, but what does that really tell us? So I just want to keep that in mind as we move through some of these Royal Commission examples that we're going to talk about this afternoon, just so that, I'm not trying to pick on anybody. It's actually about, let's just have some open, honest conversation and see if, you can learn something and take a positive and make the services better in your home for your residents, and that's actually what, your highest priority is. So we'll just take the next slide. Okay, so is Lindy with us, I hope? And if Lindy could unmute herself, and if you'd like to turn on your camera. Can you with me? Yes, I can. Okay. Sorry, Lindy. I'd like to introduce Lindy Tyford, the Hospitality Manager from Royal Freemasons, Benevolent Institution. Lindy actually went to the Royal Commission, and I think it was really timely with this presentation to actually ask Lindy. We've had a bit of a chat about how her experience was. So I just want to start off, Lindy, by asking you, how did your submission get started? Like, what prompted you to actually want to submit to the Royal Commission?
Well, I'm also a Senior Vice President of Health Services Union, and they asked and put I suppose, out to everybody who wanted to put a submission in. And so I did. I spoke to my work and my managers, and the reason I did was I was hearing, as everyone else would, a lot of the negative. And yes, there is negative out there, and I agree with what Karen has been speaking about. However, I felt that they needed to hear a positive, and they needed to hear not only positive, but the hard work that everybody that works in the industry does, and how we can help and provide information to improve the industry. So I put the submission in, and it was an hour and a half later I received a call straight away.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, it was pretty quick, wasn't it? I mean, they literally, no sooner had you sent it, you actually had them asking you to come to the commission.
Absolutely. Yep, they rang and I spoke for an hour with the lawyer, and it was great. She just asked questions and asked how would I do that and what would, So, I mean, the submission went in, of course. So once the submission was in, that's what they liked the sound of, and that's what they asked me to come to the commission to give evidence. So it started from there.
Yeah, so Lee, can I ask you, would you mind telling us what you put in your submission?
Okay, I put several things in the submission. I put in what I thought, like the focus was on nutrition, hydration. I put in ideas about how as an industry we can improve it, and some of those key points was training, staff training, providing support. I think is important for staff to be able to perform their jobs with confidence. I think that for good training and support, the industry will become more positive. I think reliable and sustainable funding is also there for the providers to be able to provide that assistance in staff with their training. I said that the personal stories I put in there about myself in the industry and how, as a staff member, it's just not about going to work, it's about becoming part of their family. And there was a story in there that I put about a gentleman whose family didn't pick him up for Christmas, and the staff just stayed back and provided that time for him for that day. And that was, I think that was good because it showed that we weren't there just to do our job, we were there to provide the care that is important for the resident. I said focus was on choice for residents of food, to be able to provide funding to allow us to have a better cost resident per day for food, to improve the menu. As everyone knows, the choice is focused on, with the agency at the moment, providing a different choice for food. Know your resident, that the staff know their resident, that their likes, their dislikes, their allergies, their seating, every little thing about that resident is important. Providing decent crockery, removal of plastic cups and the guards, and we have a thing with a plate in our crockery that's called a comfort plate, and residents have actually cried because in that comfort plate there's no need for a guard. They can have an aid and eat the food with dignity, and everyone else doesn't notice that they're different. So yeah, that was all different things. I mean, I can go on. It was just basically that was what got them going and asked them to talk more, you know, give evidence about that. How the Food Authority, how we're legislated everywhere we look, and how we comply with everything that's asked of us. And yeah, and we work for the rate of pay too, which isn't just a wonderful rate of pay. And it's also the providers work really hard. And I feel with us together, with everybody working, providers, unions, and the industry and the Royal Commission, we can improve the industry.
Great, thanks, Lindy. So, Lindy, can I ask you, because you were telling me about the process of going to the Royal Commission?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was actually daunting. It was they were very good. They spoke to us. We received information about giving evidence. It included the operation of the hearing, orientation of the hearing room, the support person allowed while you wait, how you dress, how you'd have to dress comfortable and to reflect what you are or who you are. And how if the, like the Honourable Richard Tracy AM RFBQC and Miss Linnell Briggs AO were the appointed commissioners. So if you walked into the room and they were already present, you were to bow your head. If they come in, you were to stand up and bow again. You have a copy of your statement given to you, and you were told in a room separate that you would answer the question as you were asked, not to give any more or extend on it, just to answer the question. If you weren't sure, you were to look at them and they would let you know. You could say, look, could you explain a bit further? I was with two chefs and they both had a different opinion, and we were asked to, you know, not to disagree with each other in front of the commission. So it was quite, but very good how the support was given to us. Like, I couldn't ask any more about how good they were.
Excellent. And so what was your overall impression? Do you think, well, they were, you said to me the other day when we were having a chat, they were really looking for some positives, weren't they?
Oh, definitely, they are, and still are. And they were very, like, one of the last questions that the commissioner asked me was, or asked three, if he was a resident and he wanted to sleep until 8 in the morning, what would happen? Would he be able to have breakfast, or would he have to, you know, forget or leave it? So the chefs gave their comment in their, I suppose, not industry, facility, what they would do. And my comment was absolutely that we would wait until that resident was ready to come down and eat. And if that resident, we would cook the breakfast for them at the time that they wanted. They didn't have to get out, they didn't have to come down. And he was quite happy with that because he'd heard different. So, yeah, so, and after we gave evidence, I went back to sit down and went outside, and someone else came after me. And the amount of people that came up to me saying that they really wanted to congratulate on the input, because they felt that that's what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear how good the staff are, how they work really hard, and how it's an area that they can help us improve the industry. So yeah, I felt, and also too, there was a lot of information put on the internet and things like that about what evidence I gave. So that was good, Karen, because it felt like we purchased things like crockery and bibs that aren't bibs anymore. You need to improve that it's just not looking like they've got these bibs around them. And they were impressed, and they gave me a very positive feeling that they would improve the industry.
Yeah, because you would probably agree that even if there was some negatives, there is always the opportunity to make improvements, and there's always systems and ways in which you can make those improvements that can turn that negative into a positive if you've got the will of the organisation to do so.
That's exactly right, absolutely. And for the providers too, as I've said before, the funding has been, and she was very interested in that, the lawyer that spoke to me about the fact that the funding is important. to allow the providers to provide staff with everything that's needed to improve the industry.
So overall, what was your impression then?
As far as
do you think this Royal Commission is going to really, because don't forget, as I said before, there's been lots of inquiries and lots of other Royal Commissions and lots of other stuff. Do you think this Royal Commission is going to make a difference, Lindy?
I'd like to think it is. I'm very positive, and I was given that information later on by certain people in the room who said they'll have an input into that, and they promised me that it would improve the industry. That whether it does, Karen, I don't know, but I do have a good feeling it will.
Well, I think it's actually about trying, isn't it? It's about actually getting in there and pushing the right kind of narrative, isn't it? It's actually saying that the industry is good. It's not all doom and gloom. And even though we saw some photos and we saw things on certain TV channels, there is actually a lot of good to the aged care sector, and it's trying, isn't it? Like, they're really trying. And how would you, I mean, you work really hard, Lindy. I mean, you were supposed to ring me back 2 days and it took you 2 days to get to me because you had all these things happen at your facility when we were speaking first, didn't you? I mean, it's just a ballistic, like, it's really busy.
Oh, that's right. We're having food audits, and that's exactly right. It is busy, and there's a lot of stress on the industry at the moment, and there's a lot of, and everyone would agree that's in the industry, from management down to, to provide good service for the residents. It definitely is. Yep.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much for that. That was very helpful. I must admit, when you spoke to me about this, you kind of imagine what the process would be like. You rock in there and, but again, it was a very controlled process, wasn't it? And it really was very, I suppose, definitely legal, very legal.
They have to be. They have to. And they give you, as I said, they give you your statement, but they ask you the questions, and you could think freely, oh, you're going to answer that, but you think, wow, I've got to be careful with what I say here and how, because everything is important, how it's received.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. And if anyone would like to ask Lindy a question, put the chat function, just use that, and we'll be able to look at those questions towards the end. But thanks, Lindy. That was really, really insightful. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so we just take the next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the interim report comments that are predominantly about food services. This one's, I think, a bit of an overarching one, but it can also apply to food services. And so all the, basically, the comments are going to be up the top in little, obviously, inverted commas. So the aged care facility should be a home first, workplace second, and institute third. So again, so what I've done is I've gone through that standard 4.3F, and I've actually pulled out some of the sentences that are around that standard. And this will come a little bit more clearer when you see what I've done with the checklist, which will, probably put into a better framework. But basically, you can see some of the standard relevance that I've actually pulled out. So if you actually look at that comment actually is talking about the fact that people didn't think that the emphasis was on home first, and they were saying things like workplace and an institution were looking like to be more prominent than actually the home. And of course, the standards, all 8 standards, are about trying to make sure that the aged care facility is a home. And many a time, and I've just used the word myself, aged care homes used to be called aged care facilities, whereas now they really should be called aged care homes because they're actually a home. So looking at some of the standard relevance around that, it's how does the organisation involve consumers in menu planning or food preparation? How does the organisation know it is meeting the consumer's medical, cultural, religious and other meal needs? Things like how does the organisation do meal preparation? How does it kind of get smells and appearances and good support for appetite and food consumption? Those sorts of things. What evidence is there that, the consumer's dining experience actually is comfortable and not rushed? So in the purple under these examples, I've actually just pulled out some things in terms of, like, for example, ask yourself, what is your front of house dining service like? When a resident goes into a dining room, does the resident get a hello, Mrs. Smith, how are you going? Can I help you to your chair? Is there menus on the table? I mean, how is the dining room absolutely set? Lindy's talked about things like throwing out plastics and using different types of crockery. What does that really look like? Flexible meal times again. Now, I think this is a really interesting one. Again, how do you keep flexibility when you've got staff? You've got to do a certain amount of tasks. You've got to get a certain amount of things finished. Again, I think that's actually a really challenging one. Meal presentation is also really important. Resident engagement, how's the residents really engaging around your food services, and looking at things like meal choice is a way in which you can actually obviously increase the way in which you can make it a bit more homey and a bit more choice. And then again, something around all of this is, what training do staff receive, or what training do staff actually need in this space as well. So again, looking like the home-like environment. So that was one of the interim reports comments that came back in terms of that. But again, might be a little bit negative, but you can actually turn it around and say, well, what kind of programs can we put in place to actually make sure that our home really does demonstrate to every resident and residents' families that it's actually home first. So we'll just take the next slide. So I actually did some work around this for my PhD, and basically it was really there was two things I looked at. One was actually, were residents asked if they, before the meal was taken away, so Mrs. Smith, have you finished with your meal? Can I take that for you? And the other one was looking around the dining room table if they were neat and clean. So you can see the top one, it was a really, not many people did it. So again, people were just taking meals away from residents, not asking. And that's a very simple thing every aged care home can employ immediately to actually just make sure that every resident is asked before a meal is taken away, or any part of the meal course. Dining room tables, there's some examples of some photos that I took, and just, how dining rooms are even set up. So again, it's actually about the visual of what dining rooms look like, and is it an inviting home-like environment, which is important. Next slide, please. Now, obviously we know, without a doubt, everyone on this event this afternoon would know food plays an important part for an aged care home. So it's all aspects. Food is probably the most important thing. I mean, we all like food. They look forward to it. It is fundamentally probably the last thing they have control over is what kind of food they actually get, types, what's on the menu, all those sorts of things. And of course, residents like to be part of that planning process. Again, I've been in a lot of dining rooms, and yet there's no smell. No smell comes through about food, and that doesn't really stimulate obviously the appetite. So basically, bake a loaf of bread or something if you don't have a dining room that exudes food smells. But again, looking at the design to the kitchen to the dining rooms, where are they in the vicinity of each other? And again, that comes down to how aged care homes are planned. Getting the meal hot to residents, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but basically all the sensory properties around that. And then obviously things like the dining room space, making sure they're calm and the residents are all seated correctly, and it's a really nice environment and everyone feels included. Next slide. So basically, here's the next from the interim report, the next comment. I have observed my mum sitting in her seat for her meal and have it put in front of her without any acknowledgement or even a smile, which is what I've just talked about again. So here's a little bit more of a comment about the dining room. This seems to be a bit of a thing. The dining room's trying to actually get that dining room space really sorted so that it's a good experience for residents. So some of the standard relevance, again, that is about how staff describe the mealtime and how it's engaging, staff describing to show evidence of strategies used to encourage consumers to eat and drink, evidence that the meal delivery places food and drinks within each reach of the consumer, which is very, very important. What evidence shows that consumers are satisfied with meal support, meals and dining services? What evidence do you have that consumer dining experience is comfortable and not rushed? How are consumers supported to eat and drink in a dignified way? And again, in the purple is just some things I've pulled out. Again, front of house service, what does that look like? What kind of services are you currently running? What training do you need? Care staff, how are they actually being trained to be in that environment? And also food services staff as well. How is everyone engaging with the dining room, residents, and also independence? And I can't stress this enough in terms of assessing residents so that you actually make sure that they don't need feeding support. As long as you can keep a resident independent and eating enough food without support, that's going to be better for the resident. So again, it's actually making sure you've got the right sorts of tools, the right sort of plates, crockery, all those sorts of things in place, and sitting positions. Use cloverleaf tables if you need to, all those sorts of things. Next slide. So we go down to our last poll question. So we're just, you should be ready. So basically, if we can just have the question, that would be lovely. This one should be really easy. So have you ever had a cold meal? So have you been out to a restaurant? Have you ever been served a meal which is not hot enough? So let's just see if anyone, oh, a few no's. Okay. This is going to be interesting. Wow, look at that change. It's like watching a little war, isn't it, between the no and the yeses as the pie graph, the pie chart kind of moves around, tussling with actually who's going to be the winner. Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? I would have thought the yes would have been more. I would have thought that experience would have been a lot more prevalent. which is really interesting. Okay, fair enough. All right, so I've got a few more coming in. Okay, we've kind of got a bit of, okay, so about 60% of people on today's event actually have had that experience of getting a cold meal. And as we've all known, so we might go back to the slides, thanks Esther. So if you all know that basically when you get a cold meal, what that actually means in terms of the way it feels. So it's not nice, it's not pleasant, it ruins your meal experience and all those sorts of things. There we go. So one of the comments from the interim report was meals are cold 15 minutes after leaving the kitchen, feeding residents. Now, let me talk quickly. I've done some data collection on this as well, but let's just talk about what this really means. If you could all imagine that when you get a meal, so for lunch today, I had this really nice ham quiche, which I made with spinach and all sorts of yummy stuff in it. And basically, I heated it up. Now, it was piping hot when it started. And the most important thing about a meal service, the most important thing is actually the first 3 mouthfuls of any meal you either someone eats or you actually have to assist somebody with. If the meal isn't hot enough and doesn't meet some sort of temperature criteria between your mouth and the sensors in your face, then you're not going to enjoy the meal experience, and it's really off-putting. So if you actually have had a cold meal, you really are unhappy straight away. And the reason why the meal being hot is really important, this all comes down to behavioural issues, comes down to psychologically and all that sort of stuff around it, is because we are primed to eat with a certain temperature to start with. Now, I'll give you an example. So I had quiche today with basically some salad. It was very nice. And I got distracted and I had to leave my meal and I had to go up and do something and I had to come back. Now, because I already eaten it hot, you can actually go back to the meal and just continue eating, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You've already had that hot experience. Now, I know that might sound a little bit unusual, but that's actually how it really works. So the first 3 mouthfuls of any meal is what is prime. And if you actually get a meal served around about 45 degrees, you're not going to be happy. It's really about roughly about 55 and above. You don't want it scalding hot, but it does need to be warm to start with. And that's why people aren't happy when they get cold meals. Now, there are a lot of things that happen. So you can see there I've got some data and basically shows that, you know, look at that. So one of the things I notice about aged care a lot is the fact that cold meals is very, very hard to actually, or making sure meals stay warm enough, because sometimes it can be a bit challenging. And as I've done a lot of audits in dining rooms, it's interesting to go and ask the residents about the fact what they think about the meals and, you know, are they liking them, at the right temperature and that sort of stuff. Now, sometimes just because you've got no complaints about cold meals doesn't mean that cold meals aren't actually going out to residents. And we all know that we have residents who sometimes won't say anything, don't want to complain and don't want to perceive they're actually being a nuisance to staff because they think the staff work really hard, which is fine. So the take home for this one is actually making sure you have some sort of internal system to go and check to see what the last meal is going out, what its temperature is, and also I think generally sometimes asking residents if they're getting a cold meal. But there's lots of reasons why that occurs. So inconsistent meal distribution to residents, poor thermal support systems, equipment to distribute meals, poor dining room coordination being organised to feed residents, the use of plastic to serve meals because plastic does not, even melamine, does not retain temperature, and texture modifiers can be a bit tricky in that space. So can we just go to the next slide? So I'd like to introduce Paula. Is Paula with us? Paula.
Hi, I'm here.
Paula? Oh, good. Hello. Yeah. I'd like to introduce Paula Thornton from Harvey Norman Commercial Equipment. And Paula, we've just been speaking about cold meals and equipment and all those sorts of things. So maybe we could just start off by talking about what kinds of equipment or supports you could have to, I suppose, protect meal temperature and make sure that residents get a hot meal.
So obviously we've got some equipment listed there, but most importantly is really transportation. So hold and transport and hold. So once it's regenerated, depending on your food service, whether you're cook, chill, cook fresh. So it's about bringing the food right up to temperature for food safety. Also keeping the nutrition value and the quality and the look of it and the taste, most importantly the taste, and having it on time. So then what's happening is that it's lost in transport, I think, to the actual to the time of serving, and this is one of our issues. So there's a lot of new equipment on the market now that we can engage with this. We can learn from the big hotels and that sort of thing with banquet carts. And you can do a lot of this in either in the GM pan that you're cooking it in, or you can actually plate it up. And so you can plate your product and serve it already plated. And there's some new, not some new technology, the technology's got better with heat on demand. So there's lots of different options now. Lots of
and there's also sorry. Yeah, and there's also things like the old good old dome and bases, making sure they're on properly, or using heated pallets that actually keep the meal warm. Or even I've seen in aged care homes, Paula, where they've actually only just got a hot plate, but they've got no overhead heating. So there's only the heat underneath, but not on top, which I think is an issue as well.
Sure. So if you wanted to slip to the next slide.
Yeah, sure. Next slide. That'd be great.
Yeah, I've got there. This is a new product by Burr Lodge, which is pretty popular in most aged care centres, called the Multi-Gen. This is the 106. So the idea with something like this is where she's got in the slide on the left. So, on the right-hand side, we're actually putting the food in cold, in chill, into the system, and regenerating it in the servery space or in the dining room, wherever you're going to serve. So if you're using it in a servery, or you can actually wheel this straight into the dining room, turn it on 55 minutes before your service, and as it's heating the food, you're also getting that lovely aroma to get your residents to get the salivation going, so they actually get hungry and want to eat. And then this top section is actually a Bain Marie. Sorry, not a Bain Marie. That's why I've got Bye Bain Marie. But it's actually induction cooktop, an induction top to keep the food warm, so you can actually present it really nicely and serve it from there. So it gives the client the opportunity to see something visual, and also they're smelling it. And you can actually use this particular product to cook things. So if you want to bake ahead like some par-baked bread or some cookies, once again, to get that salivation going, so we can get people eating, hungry, because that's part of the issue with the food service. People are not hungry, and so when they're hungry, they'll eat more, and then hopefully be more healthy and have longer lives and more enjoyable lives. So this is just one way to do it. So this service would serve about 30-40 people. So you can have, on the right-hand side, you see with this particular cart, you've got chilled as well, so you can keep all your salads in there. And then above that is the heat plate heater, plate warmer. And then, so you just bring all your, the service, bring everything up onto the induction plate, which heats the food from underneath. When you are using heat lamps, one of the rules is not more than 370 millimeters away from the food. Otherwise, they're just not going to work. But in this case, we're using the heat from beneath through induction, and induction's great because no one can burn themselves. It's very efficient in terms of energy, and it looks really nice. It's a very smart, modern way of doing it.
Cool. Excellent. And of course, if you're actually doing a system like this, that would probably get the smell of the food into the dining room. We might just go to the next slide.
Yeah.
And now tell us about this little Servery Design.
Okay, so I've actually designed this for a Fresh Hope up in Coffs Harbour. They've got that very old sort of 70s, 80s look servery with the Bain Marie, the traditional Bain Marie design. Obviously, this is just a line drawing, but you've got the chafing dishes there and induction, but that whole top is made of stone. So they want to, coming out of the Royal Commission, is that feeling of making it feel more like home and more inviting, more modern as well. So they want a lovely stone top and some lovely joinery around the front. And there's great new products on the market that the induction goes through the stone. So you have a little, like a trivet that sits on top of the stone, and the heat goes through the stone into the chafing dish. In this particular case, there's no sneeze guard because the residents are not helping themselves to the hot dishes. These are all served to them, and this is in the dining room. But here we've actually added in, they wanted a grab-and-go fridge and a microwave and the zip sort of hot water, boiling water, chilled water system. They want the residents to be able to have food on demand. So if they get hungry at 10 o'clock at night, they can walk and grab a prepackaged sandwich or a yogurt or some fruit. They're allowed to, like in their own home, they could go and do this. And if they want to heat something up, there's a microwave there to do it. Or if their family's visiting and they want to not necessarily cook something for them, they are going to put in a domestic wall oven behind us, so they can do that. But the idea is that I think it's really important, if you're going to make something feel like home, you want people to have choice about timing and when they want to eat, and can I go to the fridge and help myself? So
Cool.
that's the idea. So this is a double whammy sort
Nice.
of servery here.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Paula. If there's any questions for Paula, please put those into the chat function. But thanks, Paula. That was really interesting to talk about, like obviously how to improve thermal supports and also how to basically, you know, maybe do some different servery designs and transport food around. If you just want to pop yourself back onto mute, that'd be lovely. And I'll have the next slide, please. Okay, so this is our last example we're going to use from the interim report, and this is obviously about malnutrition. And I will just say at this point in time that we will do some more work on this in other events. So dreadful food, nutrition and hydration, and insufficient attention to oral health leading to widespread malnutrition. And again, some of the standard relevance around that is staff can demonstrate that they know, again, consumers' food, meal and preferences and meal size. Staff can describe how specialist nutritional advice is required. Staff can demonstrate things like how do you report changes of appetite, eating habits, any concerns with weight. Again, how do you tap into nutrition services that you might have? What's the referral process around that too? So again, it comes back to consumer nutrition services and support, eating support and menu planning, and obviously, again, what kind of training you have around that for staff. And we'll just take the next slide. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, this is the resource checklist for 4.3F. So this is the only part of Standard 4 that I've done. And basically what this means is that if you can see the snapshot of it, is that basically it's just like a checklist. So it has all the reflective questions. It also has the consumer. It has the workforce and the operational as well. It has examples of supporting evidence or documents. Now, here's the disclaimer. I'm not saying that it has absolutely everything. And I think like a lot of resources, sometimes they're a bit of work in progress. So if you belong to Church Resources, a mailing list as well, if we ever do an update to this, we can let everyone know and you can get a new copy if you want to use it. But basically, the idea is that you can run around looking at this and, you know, how are nutrition requirements met for residents. I put things like menu design, meal plans, you might have food intakes, you might have menu review reports, and you can add anything this to your like, okay? So it's not, as I said, not the be all and end all. And then basically you can say whether you got supports or does it support the standard. And at the end of every part, there's actually a bit of a, I suppose, a summary point. And from that, you can then say, got a lot of ticks going, wow, we've got a lot of evidence. Also, this will help you if you're not sure, and maybe you can actually come back and maybe there's some things in here you might need some help with, for example. But ultimately, it's just, I suppose, to give everyone a little bit of help, give your people some ideas and some support as well. Okay, and that's available. If you fill in our survey, it will actually be available for everybody. So let's just go to the next slide. Okay, now something else that we've done with the University of Queensland Victus Foodservice Research Group, which is the group I actually convene, and we put in a submission to the Royal Commission as well. Now, if you want some bedtime reading tonight, this is a 33-page submission as to what's going on in food services, what we think needs to be improved, and a whole pile of stuff. There was about 3 PhD students and 3 very good food service dietitians, including me, involved in putting this together. And if you would like a copy of this, if you'd like to go to the Nutrition and Catering Institute's website, which is listed below, basically you can go and download that and you can read it tonight and immerse yourself into food services and really enjoy it. But it's a really, again, a very interesting supporting document that actually can help, obviously, provide more information on food services and give everybody some more extra information. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically, I'm actually a supply partner for Church Resources as well, and I have preferred member rates. And so, again, just to provide more and more support, I work very closely with Church Resources, and I have a number of services. So basically, there's obviously the consultancy arm to my organisation, but we also have a newsletter for a free newsletter which you can all subscribe to. I do have to say something. I was just telling Esther before we started that there's a problem with my website this afternoon. So if you actually want to subscribe to the newsletter, can you just send me an email to my PA web address, and we'll add you in. We'll add you in manually because I don't want anyone to miss out. In that newsletter is also information about the Nutrition and Catering Institute, and why that's important is because we're going to take on the big issues to do with food services around the nation in food services. And our mantra for the Institute, and it's actually something that I've put together because I'm very passionate about food services and I want to make a lasting difference, and I just think we need better science so we can actually answer some of these questions. So it's actually a leading food service research in the area of prevention of chronic control and chronic diseases, and that includes malnutrition. And we are going to translate food service science into real application for vulnerable populations. So we're really serious I'm very serious about what I'm trying to do. And we get a lot of support from Church Resources in that space as well. And it's, basically we need homes to help us, and we also, need people to, get involved. So that's a very new initiative that's been started from my company base, so that we can actually really dive in and sort out why these things from the Royal Commission are coming out, why we're getting these sorts of comments all the time, how we can really solve big issues in terms of better services, more choice. We're actually trying to work out the cost of food services and a whole array of stuff. So if you're interested and you want to find out about that, the best way is through the newsletter. As I said, send me an email because they're trying to fix my website as we speak. Okay, next slide, please. Now I'm going to hand over to Ian Birrell, who I work with very closely at Church Resources, and he looks after the food service solution, and he's going to quickly go through a little bit about how Church Resources can support you. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you very much, Karen, and good afternoon to everyone. I just wanted to very briefly touch on food service at Church Resources. As most of you will be aware, we aggregate for all sectors, so we're essentially a buying group. And we have really specialized in the past on the not-for-profit sector, and certainly that's where the bulk of our experience and expertise lies, but we certainly do cover all sectors now. I'm really, I guess, pleased to say that we are really seen as a trusted advisor for the organizations that fall under Church Resources, and we're essentially a wonderful resource that our member organizations can access, and their procurement staff can access across a number of our categories, but obviously in particular from my point of view in regards to the food service. And that expertise is really supported and backed up by approximately a $40 million member spend that is aggregated. So it really does enable us to do a multitude of things. And this aggregated spend, aside from very competitive pricing, which is obviously very important to everyone, it really does also assist us with our preferred partners and both distributors and manufacturing base to provide our members with additional value adds that they can bring. One example would be we have a national account manager at each of our distributor partners and manufacturing partners, which in itself means that members can access additional support and services that they may not otherwise be able to do so. We also provide analysis and benchmarking for our members across the key food service categories. And I guess because of the fact that there is no obligation when we do this for the member to take up our offers, it really is a true indication of where things sit and where their current partnerships or agreements might sit that they have in place. We really are a neutral advisor and wanting to have the best opportunity for our members to access really good agreements. At the same time, very cognizant that each of our members will have different needs in mind. Next slide, please, Esther. With this, we partner with some of Australia's leading and iconic companies, as well as international companies. And as I said, our partners do provide dedicated support for our member base. And we've been aligned with most of our partners since 2008, which is when the food service category started with Church Resources. And since then, we have added a few more, and we're constantly looking at the gaps that we have as the market and the sector changes and the needs of our members change. So we're always looking for new partners to really provide our members with the key categories and products and services that they're looking for. One of the benefits is when things do go wrong, and we'd all like to say that nothing ever goes wrong, but we do work in an operational environment, and that means that from time to time things may not go as we would have wished. And one of the definite advantages of being aligned and under Church Resources in the food service category is that we're able, if you're not able to get the solution that you're looking for or the outcome you're looking for locally, we can bring in a national account team from that particular distributor, or whether it's from a manufacturing partner. And historically, we've had really good success with this, so that there's a really positive outcome, both from the member's perspective as well as the supplier's perspective. So it certainly does assist in that sense. membership of Church Resources in the food service space involves our Excellence in Food Service program. Dr. Karen has spoken about some of the aspects of her particular partnership that brings to the table, along with menu options and the assistance that she has. Other benefits are that we have a HACCP certificate program where members can contact us for the categories that they have under Church Resources in the food service space, and I carry the current HACCP certification and the workers' compensation and all the relevant insurance certificates at any one time. Very aware that they can be difficult to get hold of, particularly the current ones, and in particular when you have audits that have sprung upon you at short notice. It's certainly a lot of our members certainly take advantage of that. We also have a food service fortnightly blogs that is accessible at the website listed there, paltd.com.au/blogs/. There's a really good library of blogs available there on the food service space. Dr. Karen is the custodian of our blogs, so there's a multitude of topics that are covered there, but they're really useful information. And we are extremely passionate about educational events and providing greater information to our member base. And I suppose from this point of view, I really implore that, you know, when you complete the survey at the end, if there's any particular topics that you would like to have covered, please do let us know and we will make it happen along with Dr. Karen. So it's an area that we really want to provide as much education and information to our members in this sort of format, so because we know it's in a real need for our sector. And most importantly, CR membership is free. So our services are provided free to our members. And so if you know of any organizations who may not have heard of Church Resources or not part of Church Resources, then please encourage them to join and take advantage of our resources and benefits available. Talking of resources, Esther, if you go to the next slide. On our website, there's a lot of articles in the food service space. A really good library of articles across the health, aged care, education, and welfare sectors. It highlights our preferred partners and products from our preferred partners, but there's also educational ones as well. So by all means, access the blogs and utilize them. Next slide, please, Esther. And you'll find there are also recipes there that Dr. Karen has put together for both the aged care and education sector, with all the relevant details of how to make and what products to use. So really good information. And as I said, there's 2 or 3 years now, I think, of information that you can certainly access. And finally, we also have a YouTube channel. When Dr. Karen's been putting together the recipes, we're very fortunate that she also cooks at the same time. And I think the day that she does the cooking is the most popular time that everyone's in the office, because she cooks for everyone. And having tasted the meals, I can say they are very nice. So again, use these YouTube videos within team meetings. They're very short, and that's the purpose of them, is to use them for an educational purpose. And it's all about choice across the menu. So Dr. Karen is always videoed talking about the products at the end, where you can obtain them, and also how to put them together. And as I said, it is about choice. So with that, I will pass you back to Dr. Karen, but looking forward to everyone certainly filling out the survey and letting us know what else you'd like to hear about. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, yes. So basically, just to finish up before we start taking questions. So I've been through standard 4.3F, and as you can see, it's a very big standard. So we've touched on it today, and we will touch on it in other events as well. We've got went through some Royal Commission feedback just to see what some of the things were coming back and trying to make some relevance to the standard. But again, I think the feedback actually is quite relevant to what's actually happening in aged care. And I'd like to thank our guests, both Lindy and Paula, for their time this afternoon, and they're going to be able to take questions as well. So there's last chance. If you want to ask us anything, please put that in the chat function. Basically, we are going to send you out a survey. We would love you to fill that in, as Ian said, and also our next event, which we're looking at choice, menus, meals, and meal times, aged care standards, plus practical examples and easy choice implementation. The idea behind this event will be actually that people can basically, as soon as you finish that event, you should be able to go away and implement some extra choice. So you've got to watch this space. So the last slide. Thanks, Esther. So basically, if you want to contact either Ian or I, please feel free to use the email addresses or give us a call. As I said, unfortunately, because of my little hiccup with my website, if you want to actually subscribe to my newsletter, just use the Karen Abbey at paltd.com.au.